Katie.
Hey Sarah.
It's great to meet up with you again here on Treffpunkt Klassik.
Thanks, it's great to meet with you.
We are here in Vienna today, the city of music.
That's right, and we are going to take a tour in the footsteps of one of the most beloved musicians here in Vienna.
And who's that?
Mr. Ludwig van Beethoven.
Well, that sounds like it will be a fun adventure.
It will, I hope.
And we're celebrating a pretty big Beethoven anniversary this year, aren't we?
That's right, we are celebrating the 250th anniversary of his birth in 1770.
But he wasn't originally from Vienna, was he?
He was actually born in the German city of Bonn, but he came here at the age of 22 and never left this beautiful city.
So let's begin our tour. Tell me a little bit about the place where we are right now.
Well, we are in the center of Vienna, and over here behind you is the Kunsthistorisches Museum. It contains the extensive art collection of the Habsburg dynasty. Emperor Franz Joseph set it up because he wanted ordinary people to be able to enjoy the beautiful treasures of the Habsburgs.
The Habsburgs ruled Austria for a long time, I believe.
They did, actually. They were on the throne of the Holy Roman Empire and later the Austrian-Hungarian Empire, all the way back since the 1400s.
And Franz Joseph was part of the Habsburg family himself?
That's right. He was the last Habsburg monarch, and he actually ruled Austria for nearly 70 years.
Wow, that's a pretty long time, though.
That is a long time.
Katie, there are so many beautiful buildings in Vienna.
That's right, and actually much of what modern-day Vienna looks like we owe to Emperor Franz Joseph and to his wife, the Empress Elizabeth, who was known as Sisi.
Do you know where they lived?
They lived in the Schönbrunn Palace, and then also right here in this palace, which is called the Hofburg.
It's beautiful.
Yes, it's Vienna's imperial palace, and it's actually where the Austrian Empire was ruled from for more than 700 years.
That's a pretty long time, but Vienna has also been really famous as a city of music for a long time too, hasn't
That's
it?
right. It has been more or less the capital of music since the 1700s.
Why do you think it became so famous for music?
Well, because I think the Habsburg monarchy was very proud of its reputation for high culture, and so they worked very hard to encourage musicians to come, and they supported musicians. They offered kind of scholarships to bring musicians here, and so consequently there was a lot of musicians who came, as well as music publishers, instrument makers, and really everything musical.
Composers also probably came just to be inspired by the spirit of Mozart.
That's exactly right. Even Beethoven, when he came, he was told by Count Waldstein that if he worked hard enough, he would receive the spirit of Mozart.
That had to have put a bit of pressure on Beethoven's shoulders, though.
I would think so, yes.
So, when did Beethoven arrive in Vienna?
Well, he actually came the first time when he was 17, but he had to return very quickly to Germany because his mother got very ill. And so he came again at the age of 22, and he never left.
So, how long did Beethoven live in Vienna?
He lived here for 35 years.
But did he ever play for Mozart?
Nobody really knows. According to one biographer, the 17-year-old Beethoven met Mozart, but it was never actually confirmed whether this is true or not.
Regardless of whether he played for Mozart or not, I guess Vienna inspired Beethoven.
I think it did, because basically the majority of pieces that he wrote were written when he lived here in Vienna.
So back in those days, it probably wasn't so easy to just move around. How was it possible for Beethoven to move to Vienna?
Well, he got some help from actually Count Waldstein, because Count Waldstein was originally from Vienna, but he had taken a position in Bonn, and he was a music lover himself and really believed in Beethoven, and so he made it possible for Beethoven to come here.
So Beethoven came to Vienna to play for Haydn?
That's right.
And did he study a long time with him?
Actually, they didn't get along all that well, and then Haydn had to go away to London for a concert tour, and so the lessons just kind of stopped.
But did they remain friends?
They did, and Beethoven actually dedicated his Opus 2 piano sonatas to Haydn.
Beethoven was already becoming pretty famous in Vienna by the time, wasn't he?
That's right. He was performing in a lot of the Viennese salons of the nobility and building quite a reputation for himself.
And did he teach too?
Well, he wasn't really such a big fan of teaching unless his students were beautiful, female, and extremely talented.
That's funny. This is a beautiful area. Are we still in Vienna's first district?
We are. This is Mulcher Bastei 8.
And what's this building?
Well, this is called the Pasqualotti House, and it's an apartment where Beethoven lived off and on for 11 years.
And in which part of the house did Beethoven live?
He lived on the top floor and had 5 rooms.
What did Beethoven compose here?
He composed for Elisa and Fidelio and many other works.
I heard that Beethoven moved a lot, so living here for 11 years was a long time.
That's exactly right, but the Baron was very understanding of Beethoven's character and his temperament, and so consequently he allowed Beethoven to kind of come and go, and he just kept the rooms open for him.
Wow, that's really nice.
It was.
So why was Beethoven so malcontent?
Who knows? He was just very unhappy, and I think, if the coffee was too strong or if the bathwater was too cold or the room was too small, he decided it was time to move.
And what did the other landlords think?
I think Beethoven got a reputation for really being difficult, but people understood him, and so he always managed to find rooms.
They also say he poured cold water over his head when he composed, don't they?
It's true, and nobody exactly knows why, but maybe it was just to cool him down. But the problem was that when he did this, it would of course make the floors wet, and as the water went down through the floors, then it would seep down into the other people's apartments and cause mold, and so that wasn't very popular with the landlords.
And what about his working space in general?
It was a mess. He had food everywhere and he had papers everywhere, but as far as his work was concerned, he was an absolute perfectionist.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So, where are we right now?
We are right now in Stephansplatz, and this beautiful cathedral here is called Stephansdom.
Wow, this cathedral is really amazing.
It is. It's the symbol of Vienna. And it was originally built in 1137 on the ruins of an ancient Roman cemetery.
And is it the original church?
It's not actually, because the original church was destroyed during a fire in 1258, and in 1263 it was reconsecrated. And it has continued to be added to over the years to become the cathedral as it currently is.
It's such a beautiful cathedral. I bet it inspired Beethoven too.
Possibly, but actually it probably brought more painful memories for him, because as the story goes, he realized that he was losing his hearing when one day he looked up at the bell tower and he saw the birds fleeing from the sounds of the bells, and he realized that he couldn't hear it.
How old was Beethoven when he started losing his hearing?
He was only 26 years old, unfortunately.
Does anyone really know why it happened?
No, they don't really know. There's a lot of possible ideas, lead poisoning or syphilis, but nobody really knows the exact cause. And the autopsy simply revealed that he had a distended inner ear, and there was lesions on the ear.
I bet it must have been extremely hard to compose then.
It had to have been very hard, but luckily he had perfect pitch and he was able to hear the sounds and the harmonies and the notes simply in his head.
So, how did he communicate when he couldn't hear?
He wrote conversation books, and he would write down what he wanted to say or questions, and then the people he were talking to would answer. And so it's actually wonderful for us from history, because we know a lot about what Beethoven was thinking and how he composed.
Oh, so they survived?
They did survive, yes.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
This is such a cute street.
Yeah, this is Becherstrasse, and right here on Becherstrasse 6 is Fiegelmüller, one of the most famous Schnitzel places in Vienna.
What is Wiener Schnitzel exactly?
Wiener Schnitzel is a premium cut of veal that is tenderized with a mallet and breaded very lightly and cooked until golden brown in a fine lard.
Do you think that was Beethoven's favorite dish too?
Actually, Beethoven's favorite dish was cheese spätzle with onions on top.
That sounds mouth-watering.
It is very good. It's a Vienna specialty.
So Vienna has a lot of traditional food then?
It does. Vienna has wonderful foods. In addition to schnitzel and spätzle, there's many kinds of dumplings and wonderful sweets like Kaiserschmarrn and outstanding torts.
You're making me hungry. I think I know this monument.
Yes, this is the most famous monument to Beethoven in Vienna.
When was it erected?
About 50 years after Beethoven's death, so in the 1880s.
And who was responsible for setting it up?
It was set up from a memorial fund by the Gesellschaft der Musikfreunde, and Franz Liszt also gave money from his last concerts in order to fulfill the gap that the statue could be erected.
And can you tell me something about it?
Yes, the monument is in bronze, and surrounding it are 9 angels, and these angels represent Beethoven's 9 symphonies. And they are also representative of various aspects of his life, work, and personality.
And who are the other ones?
This over here is the goddess Nike, and when you come to this side, we have the god Prometheus.
So this monument is much more modern than the other one.
That's right. This one was actually constructed in honor of this anniversary by the sculptor Marcus Lüpertz. And he constructed 2 heads because one represents Beethoven's personality and character, and the other one represents his work. And he intended it to be a very dramatic portrayal of Beethoven's complete artistic and personal story.
Oh, that's very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So here's another sign about Beethoven.
This is called the Beethoven Todeshaus.
Do you know what the sign says?
Yes, it says, in this place stood, until 1904, the house in which Ludwig van Beethoven had lived and in which he died on the 26th of March, 1827.
And was there a big funeral?
There was a very big funeral. Schools closed and approximately 20,000 people joined this funeral procession. So it was a really big event in Vienna.
Wow, that's a lot of people for that time.
Yes, that was approximately half of the population of Vienna at the time.
He was really famous and beloved, wasn't he?
He was. He was the pop star of his time. And when he was buried, they actually only wrote on his gravestone one word, Beethoven. So he was that famous.
Is he still buried nearby?
No, his body was transferred to the Central Cemetery about 60 years later.
What did he die of?
He had so many health problems. He had cirrhosis of the liver, gastrointestinal problems. He had a lot of sicknesses.
Anyone know what his last words were?
A lot of people say that it was, "I will hear music in heaven." But actually, his last words were, "Pity, pity, too late." And he was referring to a case of wine that he had received from a publisher.
So here's another concert hall.
Yeah, this is the Musikverein. This is the home of the Vienna Philharmonic.
Oh, it's a beautiful building.
It is. It's designed in the style of a Greek temple, and inside there are 2 halls, the smaller hall and the larger golden hall.
And that is where the famous New Year's concert takes place every year, isn't it?
That's right, and it's absolutely beautiful inside.
Did Beethoven ever play here?
He didn't, because this building was actually only opened in 1870. But the idea for it was already began in 1812 from the Gesellschaft der Musikfreunde. And in 1826, Beethoven was made an honorary member of this society.
That was just a year before Beethoven died.
Right.
When was he actually born?
Well, nobody is exactly sure when he was born. He was baptized in the Catholic Church on December 17th, so people think probably he was born on December 15th or 16th.
I've heard that he left school at a very young age. Is that true?
Yes, that's true. His father saw his son's talent, and kind of in the spirit of Mozart's father, he decided that his son should be able to support the family with his talent.
He had a really strict father, I guess.
A very strict father. He made him practice very hard, and actually by the time he was a teenager, he was more or less completely responsible for his whole family.
Oh, I heard he even lied to him about his age?
That's right. He told Beethoven for years that he was born in 1772 instead of 1770, and Beethoven only discovered the truth years later. And his father did that because he thought that his son would be more famous as a child prodigy if he was younger.
Well, that makes sense, but quitting school at 10 means that he had missed a lot of basic education then.
That's exactly right, and he regretted that his whole life. He was terrible at math, and he was terrible at spelling and grammar, and actually when he capitalized a word, it was simply that he wanted to accentuate that word, so he didn't understand the idea of capital letters for nouns or beginning of sentences, and he really regretted that. And so his whole life he studied the works of Goethe and Schiller and such poets and writers so that he could better himself.
Well, that must have been a difficult childhood, but at least his father was right about his son's talent. So, where are some of the places Beethoven has played in?
Beethoven actually played all over the city. There's loads of locations, but this is one of them, and this is actually one of the most important. This is called the Palais Lpez, as you can see.
That is where you're going to play your concert too, right?
That's exactly right.
Wow, that's cool. Can you tell me a bit about the Palais?
It was actually built in 1685. This is the year that Bach was born. And in 1745, it was purchased by Ferdinand, Prince von Lobkowitz.
And I guess it stayed in the Lobkowitz family?
It did. It actually stayed in the family until 1980. And beginning in 1991, it became the Theater Museum, which is part of the Kunsthistorisches Museum that we saw at the beginning of this tour.
So Beethoven played there many times, I guess.
He did. He premiered his Eroica Symphony here and many other works, probably including the 4th Piano Concerto and the 4th Symphony. And he was regularly a guest here.
Was the Count a patron of Beethoven?
He was. The Count was a patron of Beethoven for most of his life. And he actually was a musician and a real music lover himself, because he would just invite musicians to come and play and stay, and he never would charge them, and of course he would finance their concerts and buy instruments. And together with two other members of the aristocracy, he actually paid a salary to Beethoven. They made a contract to pay a yearly salary for Beethoven. And so, in essence, he became the first freelance musician to have a regular salary.
That was unusual at the time. Where are we walking now?
We are now walking past the Café Fraunhofer, and this is one of the oldest coffee houses in Vienna.
Did Beethoven play here?
He did, and actually Mozart played here as well. As you can see from the sign, Mozart performed here in 1788. He played a pastoral from Handel, and Beethoven played here in 1797, performing a quintet for 4 horns and pianoforte.
That's interesting.
It is.
And coffee is really beloved in Vienna, isn't it?
That's right. There's a real coffee culture in Vienna.
And was Beethoven a big coffee drinker?
He was a big coffee drinker, and he loved his coffee very strong. And every morning he would count out exactly 60 coffee beans, not more, not less. And he would have his perfect coffee. So he was he really got into the idea of Viennese coffee. And I must truly say, it's probably the best coffee in the world.
So this is a famous address in Vienna, isn't it?
That's right. This is the Sacher Hotel, and this is one of the most famous hotels in the world and the home to the decadent Sachertorte.
What exactly is a Sachertorte?
The Sachertorte is a very fine chocolate sponge cake which has a apricot filling in the middle and a lovely layer of chocolate on the top.
It sounds delicious.
It is absolutely outstanding.
And there's an interesting story to it, isn't it?
That's right. It actually was created more or less by chance. There was an Austrian prince. His name was Prince Clemens von Metternich, and he was throwing a party. And unfortunately, the head chef was sick, and so the only person that was left was a 16-year-old apprentice chef named Franz Sacher. And the prince said, create something for me, and the only thing that I ask is that you don't embarrass me. And so Franz Sacher said, okay, I love chocolate, and he decided that he should create a chocolate cake.
When was this?
This was back in 1832.
And the prince had to be happy with Franz then?
Yeah, I think the prince was overjoyed.
So Katie, well, thank you for the interesting tour. And personally, I think we should go and get a piece of Sacher cake.
I think this is a good idea. Let's go in now.